Hello and welcome to the special edition series of GreenFleet Talks in partnership with Leases. In episode 1, we're going to be considering what keeps a fleet manager awake at night. My name is Kate Armitage. I'm your host for the discussion today, and I'm delighted to be joined here with Shane Coomer, who's Marketing Director at Leases UK, and Tom Ray, Director of Fleet Operations at Stellantis. Hello, Tom. Hello, Shane.
Hi, Kate.
Hi, thank you very much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. When we talk about what's keeping fleet managers awake at night, it's impossible to escape the complexity of the charging mix and the charging infrastructure that we're dealing with battery electric vehicles. And there are multiple considerations, Shane, around the location of the infrastructure, access, cost, and time. Now you talk about the importance of having a charging strategy and optimizing productivity and efficiency. So what does that mean in practice?
Yeah, so as you rightly say, Kate, for me, it's really, really important that a fleet manager has a strategy for their business and what works in terms of the requirements for their fleet, because that varies from thing to thing, but from time to time. But as leases, we've really looked at all the varying options. We've tried to consider how we can support our customers, our fleets, in terms of supporting them with the charging strategies they may wish to have. But I think there's three specific areas. So you've got your public charging. There's costs associated with that, but we've partnered with companies that are experts in all of this, that have apps, that have tools to help those customers not only see what charging facilities are available to them, but what's working, where the cost is, how do they pay for them with ease, etc., and making it easy for the driver themselves in terms of getting out there and doing the public charging, because I think that's probably the most challenging. But then likewise, you need to think about the work strategy, and you need to think about the charging from home, because I don't think you can make the assumption that your drivers will always be happy to just charge from home. So you need to work with them, you need to train them, you need to show them how it's easy, but then also make the solution of providing that charger, and again, the facilitating of the costs of that charging easy for your driver. So again, we work with partners where we can provide cards to help with paying for their ICE fuel, but as well their electric charging, and taking that one step further. And if that driver needs to charge from home, they can work out what that cost is and assign it straight to the company. So again, really easy. It takes all the pain away from the administration around the charging, and the setup of getting a wall box, etc., away from the driver. And then finally, the part that I have missed is the workplace charging. Again, it's just making sure that we're working with experts, that we're training, that we're communicating, that we're sharing the information, because there are simple things like space. Have you got the space? Where are you going to put that charger? How are you going to make it accessible for your drivers with ease, so that you've got that churn? Because if you've got cars sitting there for too long, you're not then maximizing the use of the wall box, etc. But there's so many useful tips, and as I said, from a lease's point of view, we've worked with partners to try and make that journey easier, but we've also given lots of training to our sales team, and so that they can help consult with these fleets in terms of what they need to provide.
And each fleet's different, isn't it, in terms of whether or not they're able to install workplace charging infrastructure, or indeed whether or not the vehicles are suitable for going home at night.
Absolutely, you're 100% right. That everybody's so different, and I think, as I sort of alluded to earlier, each fleet's requirements is so different. So the fleet manager does really need to think about what's available to them, take the advice, take the help that's on offer from the likes of ourselves, but other partners as well. Take that advice and then try and apply it to their situation and think of a holistic view. Because for me, with the charging, I think it does seem to be the white elephant in the room. It seems to be the thing that's creating the nervousness with people in terms of transition to electric. But if you plan, if you have a strategy, it's feasible, it's manageable, it's easy. It's just about making sure that you've considered all the options and put in place the right strategy for you.
Yeah. And getting that balance right between cost and productivity, as you said, and because I think there are some obvious things we know and we've heard repeatedly that actually relying on the public charging network has a massive impact on the total cost of ownership, but on the plus side, you don't have the upfront costs that you do if you're installing infrastructure in a workplace environment. And home charging is definitely the cheapest, but a lot of employees don't have off-road parking, or indeed aren't prepared to install that infrastructure in their properties, and you kind of have to plan for all of these eventualities.
Exactly that. You need to look at what you can manage within your fleet, take advantage of the home charging when you can. And with that, as you rightly say, there's some situations where people cannot do the home charging, but where there are, you need to engage them. You need to help them overcome any, concerns that they have around that, because it's new. And I think we're all human. When there's something new, you have a form of nervousness. But once you actually investigate it, you understand what's available, and you know that there's support out there. It's not as daunting as it first seems.
No, I completely agree with you. If it's okay, Tom, I'll pick up with you first, because it's a rare opportunity to get some insight into what Stellantis is doing. Could we talk about for fleets that are looking at procuring electric vehicles in the next 12 to 24 months, what considerations should they be thinking about? And more importantly, what vehicles have you got coming to market that are game changing?
Well, Stellantis have a multitude of both passenger car and LCV BEV offerings coming to market. So vehicles we've just launched, and lots of vehicles coming over the next 12 months. So with Vauxhall on the passenger car front, we have the new Frontera. And the new Frontera is the first car in the UK which has been launched with true price parity between ICE and BEV. So a bit of a game changer there. It will be offered with 7 seats and an extended range of up to 248 miles. Following new Frontera, Vauxhall will have the new Grandland. The new Grandland comes with an extended range of over 400 miles, which is the same as the Peugeot E3008 and E5008 has to offer. So no longer do fleet managers have to consider the balance between ICE and BEV, because the range is very akin to that of a ICE vehicle. With Citroen, we have EC3 and EC3 Aircross coming later in this year. Again, C3 Aircross will have a 7-seat option. EC3 is a real cost-effective way of getting to a BEV vehicle, but with real SUV styling. Fiat has a B segment SUV coming with the new Panda, which is a really cool looking vehicle with lots of design cues from the past. And then we've just launched Alfa Romeo Junior, which is a true Alfa Romeo but with a BEV offering, which has been extremely well received by the press. And then lastly, and quite excitingly, we have a new entrant to the UK market with Leap Motors. So this is a joint venture between Stellantis and Leap Motors. And as of Q1 next year, we'll be offering with Leap Motors a C segment and large C segment SUV to the UK. Earlier on this year, we launched our Pro 1 LCV offering. So a whole new range of LCV vehicles across all of the Stellantis brands, so Fiat, Vauxhall, Peugeot and Citroen, with the Generation 2 batteries. So now all of our LCVs have a range of between 204 and 261 miles. That's WLTP range. But it's not only the looks and the range that is improved, we have massively enhanced the connectivity and infotainment and digitalization of that product, which is really important for our fleet managers as they're managing those fleets going forward.
Oh gosh, that was like Christmas Day, Tom. There were so many gifts there for us. There was a couple of things that you said. You mentioned at the very beginning true price parity on the Vauxhall vehicle. What does that mean? Does that mean that the upfront cost is the same, or that the TCO over time stacks up?
No, obviously we've been working with TCO for a long time and looking at price parity with TCO, but this is a true on-the-road price parity between ICE and BEV. So the starting price of that vehicle will be the same, whether it be ICE or BEV. So the customer can make a real choice. Do I go BEV or do I go ICE?
That is so interesting, isn't it? That is so interesting because, I mean, my instinct is that everyone's going to go BEV. You know, once that immediate upfront cost barrier is gone, everyone's going to go BEV. But it'll be interesting to see if there are still decisions to go ICE and why. We'll perhaps explore that in a minute. You mentioned Leap Motors as well, which is really exciting. And I kind of get that with this JV and using the Stellantis network, a lot of the issues as a new entrant will have been dissipated. Can you talk about the cost of these vehicles? Is that going to really put downward pressure on the vehicles coming to market?
I think there's lots of new Chinese entrants into the UK space. I think it's difficult to comment specifically on what that will do to the overall market and prices. I don't think that there is going to be a huge downward pressure on BEV. We can see with some of our other brands like Citroen, we're making BEV more accessible with the launch of EC3 and then the price parity between Vauxhall. So equally, that's putting or increasing accessibility to BEV vehicles more than the new entrants coming in. But it will give a different offering, and it will keep pushing OEMs in terms of technology and what's on offer in the marketplace.
Great, thank you, Shane. We've kind of skirted around total cost of ownership and costs. So let's start wrestling with that. We've already heard Tom discussing this true price parity that is coming in the market with the vehicles. But you know, what's happening with this TCO, and what kind of planning and management tools do you have to help with this conundrum?
So, you know, I think you're right. TCO for me is absolutely key when considering a BEV vehicle, because although some of the price parity is coming in, that's not always the case. It's getting better and better. But if you initially look at an electric vehicle from the outset, it may feel like it's going to be a more expensive option for you. But when you start to look at the overall costs, so in terms of the taxation, the mileage you can do within maybe home charging, public charging, work charging, once you understand your strategy, when you pull into the equation all those costs, then it's not as big a climb as people think it is. And actually, in some cases, we're starting to see that it's on par with ICE. And as Tom says, the manufacturers are starting to look at it to try and take away that big step. And there is going to be some price parity on the electric vehicle. One of the other areas that I think do make people nervous, however, is, you know, the used vehicle market for electric vehicles, because you know, it's so new coming to the market as new vehicles. There's still yet to be a used market defined as such, really. It's still, I think, in its learning phase. And there's nervousness around fleets in terms of what's my vehicle going to be worth. And I think that's where the leasing option really comes into play. You know, we're working closely with the manufacturers. We've got the expertise and we're selling a lot of vehicles. So as a lease company, we can support that. And we take away that nervousness around the retail or the resale value of the vehicle at the end of the contract. and that's
Shane,
just another area that we can support.
I'm really glad you mentioned it, actually, because there is at the moment a lot of turbulence in that resale market, and it is having an impact on residual values. So definitely something that is keeping fleet managers awake at night, or if it's not, it should be. And I kind of think you're absolutely right, of course. Leasing does give you that comfort that risk is not yours, which is absolutely great. And with every downside, there's an opportunity, because actually we're learning a lot about second-hand electric vehicles. And from a technology point of view, 5 years ago, what was keeping the fleet managers awake at night was the life of the battery. But that's really not the case anymore. These vehicles are holding up really well. And actually, there are some great bargains to be had in that second-hand market as well, which is, another kind of, with every problem comes an opportunity, I suppose. But
absolutely. And I think, the used car market, there will absolutely be a requirement for it, because as we see, and I think Tom alluded before, the ZEV mandate, what it will mean for fleets is slowly but surely there will be less and less ICE vehicles available to buy. And people will need to, that's the way we're moving in this country. We need to move towards BEV. That used car market's going to grow with that, because there will be, a requirement for new as well as used as people change their vehicles, and that in turn will help reduce the leasing costs as well.
Yes.
As the used car market grows, I absolutely expect the leasing costs of electric vehicles to reduce further and further as well, because values of electric vehicles will be supported and will turn, because I think that is the nervousness right now. People have seen that what is the vehicle worth as a used vehicle right now, but I think we've got to a position now that market's starting to grow, and I think it's positive, because that in turn will mean that it will make it more accessible to new vehicles as well as the used vehicle element as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a virtuous circle, and we need to close that loop up. It will right itself. Will that residual value in that second-hand market? I know it will.
Absolutely.
And you're right. I mean, the ZEV mandate is such a crucial driver to all of this. So we've got to keep feeding the machine. What about fact versus FUD? So I think it's really helpful. I believe it's helpful to say, what should fleet managers really have on their radar? What should their laser focus be? And what are the distractions, just to kind of help really, get this focus on the agenda.
For me, I guess the big one is ZEV mandate. So I'm sure that 99.9% of all fleet managers will already have that on their radar. It's the speed and the trajectory of that ZEV mandate which is coming at us fast. So this year, broadly speaking, although it's a CO2 target, we need to achieve 22% passenger car BEV mix and 10% LCV BEV mix. Next year, that steps up. It steps up to 16% for LCVs and 28% for passenger cars. That's quite a steep curve. Now, as a manufacturer, Stellantis in the UK, we will be 100% compliant for both passenger car and LCV, but many of our competitors aren't. So there's going to be a big change next year as we push to those revised targets. And then moving forward, we can see, by the end of 2028, 50% of all sales will be BEV, both in passenger car and LCV. So the speed of which the transition is coming is quick. And so as a fleet manager, I guess that you need to be looking at how quickly you can change your mix of vehicles on your fleet to become BEV. And the distractions, there's lots of distractions in the market. It's an exciting space. I guess the one that we've just launched and we will be offering to market next year is hydrogen. So lots of talk about hydrogen. We are trialing hydrogen van with some of our mega fleets, some of our big fleet operators, which are really engaged and wanting to take that product. It has lots of advantages, such as the speed of which you can refuel. So it takes about 3 minutes to fill a hydrogen vehicle with fuel. So the downtime is far less. There is very little in the way of payload compromise between ICE and BEV. And the battery derogation, obviously, that we see in BEV isn't something that is impacted in hydrogen models. But I guess as a fleet manager, when you're considering hydrogen, you've got to look at the cost of those vehicles because they are more costly. And of course, the infrastructure, which is paramount to both BEV and hydrogen offering. The BEV infrastructure in the UK is increasing with demand, which is great to see. But hydrogen, although there are plans with lots of providers to increase hydrogen supply, unless there is a depot charging solution, it is quite prohibitive still.
Great, thank you, Tom. And so hydrogen always comes up in conversation. I do think it is a distraction, but it's great to see that this is coming. Albeit for those bigger fleets who can afford that higher cost and most crucially are able to manage the refueling infrastructure on their own sites. But if that's not you, don't worry about it. Let's focus on the ZEV mandate. Tom and Shane, it's been a pleasure talking to you this morning. Thank you both very much for your insight.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is about all we've got time for. Tune in to GF365 again soon.